I never planned to believe in haunted places. I went underground because I was curious, not reckless. Or at least that's what I told myself. The abandoned subway line was supposed to be empty, sealed off decades ago, after a new route opened above it. Old maps showed nothing but dead tracks and collapsed platforms. A perfect place to explore, photograph, and leave with a story. I didn't expect it to feel like the place was already aware of me. The moment I climbed down into the tunnel, the air changed. It wasn't just colder, it felt heavy, like breathing through damp fabric. My flashlight beam stretched across rusted rails and broken signage, revealing a station frozen in decay. Tiles peeled from the walls like dead skin. Graffiti covered almost every surface, but it wasn't random. The same symbols appeared again and again, drawn so carefully they looked ritualistic. Some words were scratched backward, deep enough that my fingers caught on the grooves when I touched them. That's when I heard the first sound. Footsteps. They were slow and distant, echoing somewhere ahead of me. I froze, listening. The footsteps stopped instantly, as if whatever made them knew I was paying attention. I told myself it was water dripping, metal settling, anything but another person. I was alone. I had to be. As I moved deeper, the station opened into a maintenance corridor, narrower and darker. My flashlight flickered, dimming for a second before returning. That's when the whispers started. They weren't loud. They didn't even sound close. It was like hearing someone talk through a wall, soft, layered voices that I couldn't understand, but somehow felt directed at me. My recorder was running, yet at the time, I heard nothing clearly enough to describe. Then the temperature dropped. My breath fogged in front of me, thick and white. Goosebumps ran up my arms as the cold settled into my bones. I felt watched, not from one direction, but from everywhere at once. When I turned toward the platform across the tracks, my light caught something standing there. It looked human, but wrong. Faded, translucent. It didn't move. It just stared. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened like invisible hands were pressing down, pinning me in place. I remember thinking, "Don't blink." The moment my flashlight shook, the figure vanished. The cold lingered, but the platform was empty again, silent, patient. I should have left then. Instead, I went further. That's when I got lost. Every corridor started to look the same. Turns I was sure I hadn't taken before led me back to the same broken signal light. My phone had no signal. My flashlight dimmed faster than it should have. Hours passed, or minutes. Time didn't make sense down there. I heard footsteps again, closer now, matching my pace. When I stopped, they stopped. When I walked, they walked. Then the water came. I heard it before I saw it. A sudden roar echoing through the tunnel. Water poured in from a side shaft I hadn't noticed before, rising fast. I ran, slipping on the rails, heart pounding so hard it drowned out my thoughts. I could swear I heard laughter mixed with the rushing water, low and distorted. My light flickered violently as the tunnel behind me filled, darkness pressing closer with every step. I burst through an emergency exit, collapsing onto dry concrete, gasping for air. When I looked back, the tunnel was dry. No water, no damage, just silence. Later, when I reviewed my audio recordings, my blood ran cold. Beneath my breathing, beneath my footsteps, there were voices, clearer than I remembered, whispering in unison. And at the very end, right before I escaped, a single voice stood out. It said my name. I don't explore abandoned transit systems anymore. Sometimes, when I'm riding the subway late at night and the train pauses too long between stations, I feel that same pressure in my chest. I swear I hear footsteps in the tunnel beside us. Still walking, still following. Most people don't realize the city has a second heartbeat, one that pulses beneath their feet. While traffic roars above and lights glow in apartment windows, another world runs quietly below. Miles of tunnels, overflow chambers the size of buildings, storm drains older than the streets themselves. I found out the hard way that the sewer system isn't just infrastructure. It's a place where things disappear, and sometimes, where they continue to live. I went down there for documentation. That was the excuse. I was helping catalog neglected municipal spaces, places the city pretended no longer existed. The access point was hidden behind a rusted service hatch in an alley. The moment I descended the ladder, the smell hit me, thick, sour, and alive. The tunnel stretched out in both directions, water crawling slowly along the floor like something breathing. The scale of it was impossible to understand until I was inside. Side tunnels branched endlessly, some large enough to stand upright in, others barely crawl spaces. Old tools lay half buried in sludge. Personal items too, shoes, backpacks, bones I tried not to identify. Spray-painted symbols marked certain walls, not random tags, but repeated shapes, arrows pointing deeper. Someone had been down here recently, someone comfortable enough to leave signs. That's when I noticed the scratches. Long gouges ran along the concrete, too wide and too deep to be made by rats. They were paired, evenly spaced, as if something had dragged itself through the tunnel again and again. I kept moving, telling myself it was machinery damage. It had to be. Then I heard splashing that didn't match my steps. It came from a side tunnel, fast and deliberate. Something large shifted in the darkness, displacing water in heavy waves. My light caught movement, low to the ground, pale and wrong. It vanished before I could focus, but the smell changed, sharp and musky, like wet animal fur and rot. I remembered the stories people laughed off. Sewer gators, mutated animals, things that adapted too well to the dark. I laughed once. Not anymore. Further in, the tunnel opened into a massive chamber, water flowing waist deep. Something broke the surface near the far wall. Too tall, too upright. A silhouette stood there for a moment, hunched and watching. Its eyes reflected my light, not like an animal's shine, but dull and yellow, almost human. When it moved, it slid back into the water without a sound. I ran. That was when the gas hit me. It started as dizziness, then a pressure behind my eyes. The air grew thick, sweet in a way that made my stomach turn. I knew the danger. Hydrogen sulfide, methane pockets. One wrong breath could knock you unconscious forever. The walls began to pulse, bending inward. I heard voices echoing through the tunnel, calling me deeper, telling me I was safe if I just stopped moving. I almost listened. My foot broke through weakened concrete, plunging into a collapse zone. Chunks of ceiling fell behind me, sealing the path I'd come from. Dust and filth filled the air as the tunnel groaned, shifting like it might bury me alive. I clawed my way forward, lungs burning, vision tunneling. Something moved behind me in the debris, fast and confident, as if it knew these tunnels better than I ever could. I don't remember how I found the exit, only waking up on the pavement above, covered in sewage, coughing until my chest felt torn open. Doctors said I was lucky. Mild exposure to toxic gas. No infection, yet. They warned me about what lives in that water. Parasites that eat tissue. Bacteria that shut organs down. Diseases that don't show symptoms until it's too late. Sometimes, late at night, I still smell it. That sewer air creeping up through storm drains. I swear I hear splashing beneath the street. Something pacing the tunnels directly under my feet. Waiting. The city says the sewers are empty. Controlled. Safe. But beneath the pavement, something is still moving through the veins of the city. And it knows how to find its way back up. I found the bunker by accident, buried beneath a forgotten government building scheduled for demolition. Official records called it a storage sublevel, but the steel blast door told a different story. Faded yellow and black hazard stripes framed the entrance, and a warning stenciled above it read, "Authorized personnel only." The kind of sign meant to outlive the people who posted it. Curiosity won. The moment I forced the door open, the smell of old metal and stale air rushed out like a breath that had been held for decades. My flashlight beam revealed a narrow stairwell spiraling downward, each step coated in dust thick enough to preserve footprints. None of them were recent. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. At the bottom, the bunker opened into a command corridor. Concrete walls, reinforced ceilings, and heavy cables running like veins overhead. This place wasn't meant to be temporary. It was built for survival at the end of the world. Fallout shelter signs still clung to the walls, arrows pointing toward rooms labeled medical, communications, command. Every door I passed felt like a sealed mouth, holding secrets no one was meant to hear again. The deeper I went, the quieter it became. No hum of electricity, no distant city noise, just my breathing echoing back at me from every direction. The silence pressed in hard, thick enough to feel. I realized these bunkers were designed to isolate, to cut their occupants off from the outside world completely. Down here, the concept of above felt unreal, like a memory fading too fast. That's when the paranoia started. It came slowly at first, a feeling that my flashlight wasn't enough, that something moved just beyond its reach. I kept turning around, convinced I'd hear footsteps behind me. Each corridor looked identical, intentionally disorienting. I began to wonder how many people had panicked down here, sealed in by blast doors, waiting for orders that never came. In one room, rows of rusted bunk beds lined the walls. Personal items still sat on the frames, an old watch, cracked glasses, a child's book yellowed with age. They weren't scattered. They were neatly arranged, like the occupants had stood up and walked away mid-thought. My chest tightened as I imagined the alarms sounding, the countdowns, the knowledge that the world above might already be gone. The air felt thinner the farther I went. My head started to ache, a dull pressure behind my eyes. Shadows at the edge of my vision stretched and shifted, almost breathing. I caught myself whispering just to hear a human voice, even if it was my own. That's when I noticed the cameras. Old surveillance units hung from the ceiling, lenses black and unblinking. They shouldn't have worked. Nothing down here had power. Yet every time I moved, the sensation of being watched intensified, as if the bunker itself was aware of my presence. Then I found the message. It was in what looked like a debriefing room, a long table bolted to the floor, maps peeling off the walls. On the concrete, written in dark, rust-colored streaks, were words smeared by human hands. We were never meant to leave. The stains were too deliberate to be an accident, too fresh-looking to be decades old. My stomach turned as I noticed handprints nearby, dragged across the floor as if someone had been pulled away. There were no official reports of deaths in this bunker, no records of incidents, nothing that explained this. In a locked storage room, I found crates stamped with government seals, untouched, unopened. Inside were reels of tape, labeled with dates that extended years beyond the bunker's supposed abandonment. One tape recorder sat on a desk, already loaded. When I pressed play, static filled the room, followed by a man's voice, shaking, exhausted. They told us it was a drill, he said, but the doors didn't open. Days passed, weeks. We started seeing things, hearing commands that didn't come through the radios. Someone said we were still being observed, that this place was never a shelter, it was a test. The tape cut off abruptly. That was enough for me. As I retraced my steps, the bunker felt different, tighter, closer, like the walls were leaning inward. I could swear I heard breathing that wasn't mine, synchronized with my own, just half a second behind. When I finally burst back into daylight, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely pull myself up the ladder. The building was demolished a month later. Officially, the bunker never existed. But sometimes, late at night, I wake up convinced I'm still down there, sealed in concrete and steel, being watched, waiting for a command that never comes.